solving a quadratic equation, and this is part 2. We're going to now solve the equation, the quadratic equation, x squared minus 6 equals 5x. Alright, keep these steps handy as you're working on these in your homework, because it's very important that you check off all 4 steps as you work on the problem. Because this first step is very important if there's more going on than just 3 terms. Simplify and combine like terms on each side. In this one, we don't have to worry about that. There are no like terms. We got an x squared, we have no x, and we have a plain x. But let's look at the second step. Do operations of adding or subtracting to get all the terms on one side set equal to 0. Notice, here's my 2 sides of my equation. I don't have 0 on one side. I want to move everybody to one side and get 0 on the other side. How do I do that? I take this 5x away from both sides, because that'd be the easiest one to move because it's all alone over here already. So if I subtract 5x from both sides, remember, I'm going to get 0 over here now, and I actually am going to write that 0 down. I'm not going to be lazy. And on this side, I can't take 5x away from either of these terms, so instead I write it like this: x squared minus 5x all on its own minus 6. And we like to have these in descending order. The x squared term, then the x term, and then the plain number. Again, I did not take the 5x away from the 6 or the x squared. I just wrote minus 5x on this side of the equation because I took it off of the other side by subtracting it. Now I've completed step 2. I've got all the terms on one side set equal to 0 because we need the equation in this form before we can factor it. Alright, so that's step 3. Factor this side, then set each of those factors equal to 0. So here's where we set up our 2 binomials. We make our baseball diamond, times and plus. We put the constant term here, plain number that is, and the coefficient of the x term here. Alright, I need a factor pair that multiplies to make negative 6 and adds up to negative 5. Now you might be thinking negative 3 and negative 2, but if I use negative 3 and negative 2, they multiply to make positive 6, not negative 6. So that's not the factor pair. So the only other factor pair of 6, or negative 6, is a 6 and a 1. 6 times 1 makes 6, and one of them is going to have to be negative. Which one will have to be negative so they add to make negative 5? Well, it's going to have to be the 6. It's going to have to be the bigger one. So I will have negative 6 and positive 1. Again, check it. Negative 6 times positive 1 is, yes, negative 6. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Alright, remember how this works? X goes here and here for the x squared, and then the minus 6 from this corner, and the plus 1 from this corner. Plus 1 because it's positive. Alright, I've finished part of step 3. Factor that side. Now I need to set each factor equal to 0. Remember, you've got 2 things being multiplied. Either this thing has to equal 0, or this one has to equal 0 to get 0 for a result from the product. So right here I draw 2 arrows, and I write x minus 6 equals 0 for one of my equations, and the other factor, x plus 1, equals 0. And you do this. Solve the resulting equations. Alright, what minus 6 equals 0? Well, 6 minus 6 equals 0. Not sure you got it right? Do your equation solving steps. Undo minus 6 with plus 6, and yep, I get x equals 6. What plus 1 makes 0? Well, and negative 1 plus 1. How do I know? If I do my equation solving steps, I would subtract 1 from each side, and I get x equals negative 1. Again, this quadratic equation has 2 answers because it's x squared. We usually get 2 answers. Now, in your homework, there are going to be a couple of these, so I think if you'd like some extra practice, I'll add another video for those that want it. Tune in, and I'll solve a couple more of these with you. Thanks.